By now you should be able to play a major triad on any note on the piano, and you should also be able to play them in inversion. You should also be able to play any minor triad on the piano in different inversions too. And hopefully also you know some 7th chords, so straight 7th, minor 7th, major 7th, maybe even diminished 7th, half diminished 7th, and also be able to play 7th chords in different inversions and on different notes. However, what you might not be able to do is see a chord in a piece, let's say in another tutorial video or in a piece that you're sight reading, and be able to analyze what chord it is. So that maybe if you saw this chord in a piece, you might have played it before, but you might not be able to tell straight away that it's an E flat major chord. Or if you saw this, you might not be able to tell straight away that that's D7 with a 7th at the bottom. So what I'm going to do in this video is the exact opposite that I've done in the other videos so far. So far I've given you the root of a chord and showed you how to build the rest of the chord on top of it. In this video I'm going to show you how to take a chord and work out what the root is. So in this case, F sharp. And I'm going to show you how to do that without having to rearrange the chord. So that, if you see a chord like this, you don't have to put it through inversion until it's in root position to work out what the root is. So I'm going to show you how to find the root of any triad or 7th chord just by looking at it. Well, let's start with triads, and let's keep it simple by using C major. Now what we're going to do is look at the intervals between adjacent notes. So if a triad's in root position with a root at the bottom, the intervals between adjacent notes are thirds. Third there and third there. So we can say that when a triad's in root position, it's in order of thirds. Then if we invert it and look at the intervals, we get a third and then a fourth. And if we invert it again, that fourth is still there. Now the crucial thing is to notice that the root of the chord is at the top of the fourth. There's the fourth and the root is at the top. So when a triad is in any inversion other than root position, so first inversion, second inversion, you always have this fourth there, and the top of the fourth has to be the root. So that actually gives us a rule for working out what the root of any triad in inversion is. If you see a triad like this in inversion, here you have a fourth and a third when you look at the intervals between adjacent notes, and the top of the fourth is the root. So that's E. And sure enough, if we rearrange it, we can see it's E major. Or if you have a chord like this, here we have a third and a fourth. Top of the fourth is the root, so F is the root of this chord. That's F minor in inversion. Let's do a couple more examples. Suppose you have this chord. That's a third and that's a fourth. So B flat, the top of the fourth is the root. That's B flat minor. Or suppose you have this chord. Well here, don't forget, it's in order of thirds. We just have thirds, so the bottom note is the root. So don't forget, you might not always find a fourth. If everything's in order of thirds, it's in root position, and the bottom note is the root. Now be careful, because you may come across chords like this. Well, this chord is made up of two fourths. You have a fourth here and a fourth here. So if the top of the fourth is the root, does that mean that the C is the fourth or the F is the fourth? Well, in this particular case it's ambiguous, because this could be a G7 with a suspended fourth, or it could be C major with a suspended fourth as well. So actually, maybe G is the root if it's a G7 chord. Basically, if you have more than one fourth, it's ambiguous and you can't tell. There's probably a suspension in there somewhere. But you need to look at the musical context to work out the chord then. However, for the vast majority of cases, as long as the triad is made up of a root, a third and a fifth, with no suspended thirds or fourths or seconds or anything, then that rule applies. So top of the fourth is the root. If everything's in order of thirds, the bottom note is the root. Okay, well now let's look at 7th chords. And again, let's keep it simple by taking G7. So once again, when it's in root position, everything's in order of thirds. The The intervals between adjacent notes are all thirds. However, if you start inverting it, you get a second between the 7th and the root. And that second stays there in all of the inversions apart from root position. So any other inversion other than root position, you have a second. And the top of the second is the root. So for 7th chords, the rule is that the top of the second is the root. And again, just as with triads, if it's in order of thirds, the bottom note is the root. So let's do a few examples with 7th chords. Well, now if I play you, let's pick a different one. I think I played this one at the start, and I said this is D7 in inversion. Well, now hopefully that's quite easy to see, because that's the only second in the chord, so D is the root. It's D7. Or if I do another one, say I play this, it's more of a jazzy chord. Here we have a third and a third, but a second at the top. Top of the second is the root, so that is F. It's an F major 7 chord in inversion. Let's do this chord. There you can see a second in the middle, so F sharp is the root, that's F sharp, 7 in inversion. And here we have the second at the top, so A flat is the root. It's A flat in inversion. A flat 7 in inversion, sorry. So let's put those two rules together. We have the rule for triads and the rule for 7ths. If we put the two rules together, we get that any triad or 7th chord in inversion, look for the second or fourth, and the top of the second or fourth is the root. If everything is in order of thirds, then the bottom note is the root. And if you have more than one second or fourth, then it's an ambiguous chord. There's probably a suspension in there somewhere, but you can't tell what the chord is without the context. So that's all a lot of abstract theory. I'll write it below this video, but let's just do a few more examples to make everything really clear. So I'll mix up triads and 7th chords. Well, here we have a third and a fourth. Top of the fourth is the root. The root is B, happens to be B major. Here we have a second in the middle of the chord. Top of the second is the root, so that's E. Happens to be E minor 7. Let's do another one. Keep on trying to change the root. Let's do this. Here we have third, second, third. Top of the second is the root, so that's D flat. It's D flat 7 in inversion. And pick another one. Here we have third, second, and fourth. So it's ambiguous. We have a second and a fourth, so we can't tell what the root is. Some kind of suspended chord, or not a straight triad or 7th. And let's just do a couple more. Well, here we just have thirds. Third, third, and third. So this one's in root position. E flat is the root. That's E flat minor 7. So, find some piece of classical music that has lots of chords in it and analyze them. See if you can work out the roots, or even better, take a score which has the chord symbols written above so you have the answers, cover up the chord symbols and see if you can work them out, or at least work out the root without looking at the chord symbols first. Just a couple more words before I finish. Of course, all the chords I did so far were nice and compact. They're all within one hand. But you may get chords which are spread out. So suppose you have this chord. Well, here you might think, well, we have a fourth, top of the fourth is the root, so that's E flat. And you'd be right if these were the only notes in the chord, that would be E flat major. But we also have a C in the bass. So if a chord is spread out over more than one octave, squash the notes up so that they fit within one octave, and then we get this chord. And there we can see that actually we have second, third, and third. So top of the second is the root, C is the root, not E flat. That's a C minor 7 chord in inversion. Let's do another one like that. Suppose you have this chord. Again, it's probably best to squash it to within one octave to work it out. Top of the second is the root, that's A flat. It's an A flat major 7 chord in inversion. Also, you may get a chord like, let's say this, where you have repeated notes. These two notes are repeated up here. So then just take out the repeated notes, say those two, and then analyze the chord. There's the fourth, top of the fourth is the root, so that's F sharp major, which of course you could find faster by taking out the bottom two notes. So if you have a chord that is spread out over, a couple of octaves, let's say, pick another one, say like this, and you have repeated notes, well, these two notes are repeated up here, so we can drop these ones, squash everything to within the same octave, and then analyze it. B, that's B7. So squash all the notes into one octave and take out any repeated notes, and then top of the second or fourth is the root. Everything's in order of thirds, the bottom note is the root, and if there is more than one second or fourth, it's ambiguous chord and you need to look at the context.